Hey, welcome to the Unshakable Edge, the podcast for those who refuse to settle. I'm your host, Joe Warren, and if you're ready to master discipline, strengthen your mindset, and gain the edge in every area of your life, this is your home. Each episode delivers powerful insights on resilience, growth, and success, helping you take control of your life, take action, and build an unshakable life. Let's dive into this week's episode and sharpen your edge today. Have you ever had a moment where something small, a comment, a memory, a mistake, replayed in your head so many times that it became a part of your identity? Not because it was true, but because it was familiar. Maybe it sounded like, "You're not good enough. You're not ready. You missed your chance. You're too late." Here's the part that no one tells you. The most powerful lies you'll ever face won't come from other people, but it will actually come from inside your mind. In this episode of the Unshakable Edge, we're not just going to talk about mindset. We're exposing the invisible script that's been running your life, often without your permission. And then we're going to rip it up and we're going to write a better one, because your future shouldn't be shaped by a lie you never meant to believe. So how does this happen? How do smart and capable, purpose-driven people get stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, fear, and thinking that we're not enough? It usually doesn't start with a major breakdown. It starts really with a whisper. And that whisper, it sounds like a question. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's subtle, a passing thought, a tiny doubt, a question that plants a seed. And that seed, if you water it with repetition, it grows roots. It might start with, "Am I really enough? What if I'm not who they think I am?" But end up eventually becoming, "Maybe I never was." The voice in your head is not always the voice of truth. Sometimes it's just the voice of old wounds. And when the lie sounds like your own voice, you stop challenging it. You start agreeing with it. And that's when it becomes dangerous. Because it's not just the thought anymore, it becomes a belief. And beliefs begin to shape everything. Let me tell you a story that shows how easily we follow thoughts without ever asking, "Is this even true?" There was a powerful old poem written in 1895 by Sam Walter Foss called "The Calf Path." And it tells the story of a little calf who wandered through the woods of Vermont, carving a crooked trail as he walked. Then the next day, a dog followed that same path, then a sheep, then people, and over time, that random trail became a walking path. Then it goes on to say, then a wagon road, and then a highway. And the kicker is this: no one ever stopped to ask, is this really the best way to go? That's how our thoughts work too. We keep walking the same mental paths every day. Not because they're necessarily right, but because they're familiar. Dr. Joe Dispenza said it this way: the brain will always choose familiar over freedom, unless you train it to do otherwise. Your mind forms ruts. The more often you think a certain way, the more your brain wants to keep thinking that way. That's why self-doubt can become just an instant reflux. Why fear can become a filter. Not because they're facts, but because they're familiar. Let me give you a visual. Every thought that you repeat is like a footstep through tall grass. You do that enough times, and those footsteps over the grass make a trail. Soon it becomes a default route. even if it leads you somewhere that you don't want to go. Neuroscience backs this up. It basically tells us that your brain builds actual pathways, neuroconnections around the thoughts that you most often think about. They call it neuroplasticity. You think anxious thoughts, your brain gets better at being anxious. You repeat lies like I'll never change or I'm not enough, your brain gets better at believing them. But here's the good news. The brain also rewires in the direction of truth. You can train it. You can build new roads. That's really what transformation looks like. Not a lightning bolt that hits you and boom, but a trail forged one thought at a time. According to a 2022 study in Frontiers in Psychology, intentional thought repetition, especially with truth-based affirmations, can change behavior, increase resilience, and actually reduce anxiety. So here's the question to sit with. What mental road am I walking every day? And who paved this road? And more importantly, isn't it time to take a machete to that overgrown trail and make a new one? So let's say you've noticed a path. You realize some of the roads your mind travels daily were never meant to take you anywhere good. And yet, they feel familiar. That's a huge first step. But here's the tricky part of this. Not all lies look like danger signs. Sometimes they show up wearing the tag that says wisdom or maturity, or even sometimes can look like common sense. The most dangerous lies, they're not loud, they're not obvious ones. They're really the ones that sound almost true. They're not bold-faced lies. They're just twisted enough to plant doubt. They sound like, I'm just being realistic. People like me don't get that far. It's safer not to try again. I don't have what it takes, and deep down, I've always known that. Let's be clear. These lies aren't obvious. That's why they're so effective. They wear disguises. They sound reasonable. They sound like you. And because they're so close to the truth, you never challenge them. Your beliefs don't have to be true to shape your life. They just have to be yours. There's a kid that signed up to sing in an 8th grade talent show. He's practiced, he's prepared, he's excited. But a classmate begins to snicker. You're gonna sing? That's gonna be hilarious, he says. And the kid laughs it off, but inside something cracks. That night, he skips the performance and he never signs up again. Not because he wasn't talented, but because one person's joke became his internal script. He didn't hear, they think I'm bad. He heard, maybe I really am. And for 17 years, he didn't sing again. That 90% lie ruled his gift. Psychologists call this cognitive distortion. It's when your brain bends facts to fit your fears. For example, you remember one criticism and forget the 10 compliments. They call that filtering. You mess up once and start calling yourself a failure. They call that labeling. One rejection becomes a life sentence. That's called catastrophizing. The enemy of your growth doesn't need to shout you're worthless. All it has to do is whisper, you're not quite enough. And if you don't catch that distortion, it becomes your direction. The entrepreneur who never starts because someone said, it's too risky. The artist that stops painting after one bad review. The woman who stays silent in meetings now because a past boss said that she was too emotional. The man who won't ask for help because he believes real men fix their own problems. These aren't outliers. These are people you know. Maybe they're you. Donald Miller stated it this way: the most dangerous stories are the ones we don't know that we are telling ourselves. The lie isn't powerful because it's loud, it's powerful because it's familiar. We don't even realize that we're telling ourselves these lies. They're just so familiar to us, they're just default for us. I love what Amy Morin said. She said, people don't believe what's true, they believe what's repeated. And when you repeat it, it becomes familiar. And when it becomes familiar, it becomes dangerous. So the real question is, what truth have you been living under that really isn't a truth at all? Because just like that kid in the talent show, you may have buried a gift, a dream, a version of you that was never the problem. The problem was the lie that you believed about it. Let me tell you some stories about some real people. Not perfect people, but people who handled a lie and decided not to live by it. The first story is about a woman that was told the lie, you're too emotional. You don't belong in media. Now, this woman, she grew up in poverty in rural Mississippi. She was the daughter of a teenage single mother, and her life was marked by trauma, including sexual abuse, multiple relocations, and a sense of being unseen and unheard. But she found something powerful in storytelling. First through church readings and then in school. And by the age of 19, she was anchoring the evening news in Nashville. It looked like success, but she didn't fit their mold. She was told she was too emotional, too dramatic, not objective enough for the news. Eventually, at a Baltimore news station, she was demoted, taken off the evening news, and reassigned to a low-rated talk show. In other words, she basically was being told, you're not cut out for real journalism. You're just not what we need. That could have been the end, but instead of shrieking, Oprah Winfrey leaned into the very thing that they said disqualified her. Her empathy, her emotion, her connection to people, and that became her superpower. That low-rated talk show she turned into, the Oprah Winfrey Show, one of the most influential platforms in media history. She replaced the lie of you're just too much with the truth. My voice matters. And the world needs more heart, not less. She didn't change for the system. She changed the system by being fully herself. But more than that, she wrote the script, not just for herself, but for millions who looked like her, grew up like her, and were told they were not enough. Oprah has now become the first Black female billionaire in America. And the truth that she lived into, as she would state, turn your wounds into wisdom. The next story is about a guy by the name of Jim Carrey. A lie that played out in his life was play it safe, don't dream too big. Now, Jim grew up watching his father, Percy, a man with sharp wit and was known for making people laugh. But instead of chasing his dream of being a comedian, Percy settled for a safe job as an accountant. And then his safe job failed. Percy was laid off, the family was evicted, and at the age of 15, Jim was living in his van with his family and working the night shifts as a janitor to survive. That moment branded something into Jim's brain. You can fail at what you don't want. So why not go for what you love? It was a radical flip from fear to a different truth. After this flip, He decided that he was going to write his own material. And then Jim began to do some stand-up comedy, and boy, he bombed. It didn't go that well. He tried again, no such luck. And so he found himself traveling around auditioning for acting positions with no money, but he did have the truth. Go for what you love. And so in 1990, broke and unknown, he decided to write himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered. Post dated it for 1995, 5 years into the future, and then put it in his wallet and carried it from that day forward. Now, what's amazing that in 1995, he landed the movie Dumb and Dumber, and this role paid him $10 million. But the real story isn't the paycheck that he post-dated. It's that Jim rejected the lie that safety is smarter than passion. He rewrote the script his father molded, not with rebellion, but with the risk and the truth. And the truth he lived into: you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance, as he said, on doing what you love. The last story is about a young girl named Bethany Hamilton. And the lie that was there was, you're not whole. You'll never do what you love again. Because at the age of 13, Bethany was already a rising surfing star. She had talent, she had drive, and she had a dream of going pro. Then the shark attack came. A 14-foot tiger shark ripped her left arm off while she was surfing. She lost over 60% of her blood. She should have died, but she actually survived. And the first question that she asked in the hospital wasn't, why me? No, it was actually, will I ever surf again? The doctors were unsure. The world was full of doubt. The media was already saying, game over. No surfing career is probably going to happen. But deep down, there was a lie that tried to take root. You're not whole anymore. You're finished. Now, Bethany could have played into that, but she refused to let this lie define her. Less than a month after her attack, she was back on her board, reworking how she surfed. And before you knew it, in less than 2 years, she won a national title surfing. She adapted, she innovated, she didn't wait for things to be easy, she just made them possible. She replaced the lie, I'll never be the same, with a new truth. I don't need easy, I just need possible. And now, she's not just a surfer, she's a global symbol of grit, faith, and purpose. Now, none of these three had a perfect story, but they all made one powerful decision. They would not live by the lies of others and began living a truth that carried them through life. So let's make this practical for all of us. Real change doesn't come from hype. It comes from habits. And one of the most powerful habits that you can build is replacing lies with truth. This is not just a motivational exercise. It's actually a reprogramming process that has been backed up by research from the Journal of Cognitive Therapy. They showed that replacing negative automatic thoughts with intentional truth-based statements significantly improves emotional health and long-term behavior. In other words, what you speak consistently becomes what you believe. And what you believe becomes how you live your life. So my challenge to you is this. Step 1, write down the lie. And then step 2, write down the replacing truth that combats that lie. And then step 3, speak it out loud every day. Let me give you some examples of this just to get you going. The lie might be, I'm behind in life. The truth that you're going to replace that with is, I'm not behind. I'm just on a different timeline, and that's okay. The lie might be, man, I always mess things up. But we're going to replace that with the truth of, I've made mistakes, but I'm not a mistake. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm evolving. The lie might be, I missed my chance. The truth that we're going to replace that with, if I'm still breathing, I'm still becoming. There's still possibility. The lie might be, I'm not like them. We're going to replace that with the truth of, my difference is actually my advantage. The lie might be, I have to be strong enough for everyone. The truth is, asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The lie might be, I'll always struggle with this. The truth that we're going to replace that with is, I'm not stuck, I'm in progress. See, we've got to get rid of the lies, because you can't live a new life with old lies rolling around in your head. So start with one lie, just one. And don't just think the truth, say the truth. Speak the truth into your day. Speak the truth into your decisions. Speak the truth into your relationships. Because this truth isn't just a statement, it is a weapon. And when you use it consistently, it starts to cut down the lies that have shaped your identity. Now, write this truth on your mirror. Set it as a phone alarm. Journal it. Post it somewhere that you will see it every single day, so that you constantly are reminded. Because what you repeat, you remember. And what you remember, you begin to live. Let that truth speak louder than the lie ever did. So let's land this plane. You've heard the lies. You've seen how quietly they can take root and how loudly they can echo in our lives. You've heard stories of people who rewrote their script. And now the question isn't, do I have what it takes? The question is, am I done letting the lie decide who I am? You don't have to believe everything you think. If a thought is making you feel small, stuck, hopeless, or unworthy, challenge that. You're not your past. You're not your fear. You're not the lie. You're a story that's still being written. If you've never heard this before, hear it now. You're not too late. You're not too broken. And you're not too far gone to change. I've seen countless people change their lives in my life by simply cutting down the lies with the truth. And you can tear up the old script and you can write a new one. Well, hey, that's it for this episode of the Unshakable Edge. If this resonated with you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stay disciplined, stay focused, and keep sharpening your edge.